Look, I can't put this man on television. He's barely awake.
Lauren, if John Belushi could speak, he'd tell you he's got to go on.
Doc, I don't understand. Why are you so convinced that this man can do a show?
To be perfectly honest, it's about my fee. You see, if he doesn't go on, he doesn't get paid.
Right.
And if he doesn't get paid, I don't get paid. And if I don't get paid, I'll be forced to cut off his drugs.
Live from New York, it's Saturday night!
Hello and welcome to the Not Ready for Primetime podcast. We're Gary Seath and Brad Robinson.
And you're not.
This week we're talking about Season 2, Episode 12 with host Ruth Gordon and musical guest Chuck Berry. This show originally aired on January 22nd, 1977. Brad, for a Ruth Gordon show, there's a lot going on here tonight.
There's a lot. I agree. And to help us sort through it all, very happy to introduce our guest this week. He has an amazing podcast called Too Much Information, as well as a very cool podcast called Stone's Touring Party. Somebody who knows a lot of stuff about a lot of stuff. Unlike us, who don't know much. Yes. Jordan Runtagh, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. That's a very kind intro. I mean, I just want to say, I can tell you the name of Billy Joel's first band, but I don't know my own blood type. So, I mean, that's kind of the knowledge base we're working with here. So,
so it's a level playing field then among the three of us.
Yeah,
okay. Yeah, it's fine. That's good. This show's unique, Jordan. We have, at the time, the oldest host of Saturday Night Live. This is just 2 episodes after we had the youngest host at the time. So we had Jodie Foster a couple of weeks ago, who was 14. And now we have Ruth Gordon, who at the time was 80, I believe.
80 and change, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
She is the one of only 2 SNL hosts to be born in the 1800s.
Yeah.
Miskell Spillman, who was also 80, who hosted SNL in December 77. They were both born in 1896, but I think Ruth was earlier in the year. She's still, I think she's the 3rd oldest SNL host. Miskell was a little older, and then Betty White, when she hosted in 2010, was
Betty White took her
88.
over,
Yeah. And the really weird part is I'm currently at my girlfriend's apartment in Quincy, Massachusetts, which I learned.
Okay, we get it. You have a girlfriend. Okay.
Well, no, it is 8 minutes from Ruth Gordon's birthplace. I just learned that this afternoon. Really weird.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. It just feels
driving
faded.
around. You saw the marker.
Yeah.
This is called quality guest booking right now. Look at this, how it all ties in.
Jordan went out of his way to go to his girlfriend's house to be near Ruth Gordon's birthplace. That is commitment. Thank you.
We started dating because I found out she lived near Ruth Gordon's birthplace. So a big Ruth Gordon fan. That's why
First time that's been said since 1977. So, all right.
I don't know that it was even said in 1977, but that's, we'll go with that.
Are you trying to say Ruth Gordon was not a big draw in 1977?
I don't understand. I spent all this afternoon looking at her entire discography, filmography, whatever, figuring out why they booked her, and I couldn't figure it out.
Oh, I'll tell you right now. It's 3 words.
Tell me.
And this should be an episode, and tell me when you're doing it on Too Much Information. The Big Bus.
That was like 6 months earlier, though, in 76.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It took him 6 months to get her. That's how hot she was.
All right. Okay. I watched that once, maybe 20 years ago. My memories of it are dim. Does it hold up?
I actually revisited it maybe 5 or 6 years ago.
Really?
Yeah. It's not as great as 13-year-old Brad remembers. Oddly enough. But to answer your question, the reason she ended up hosting was Lorne Michaels was a huge Harold and Maude fan. It was one of his favorite films. Okay. And so, I mean, I like to think The Big Bus is also high on his list, but I think it really goes back to Harold and Maude.
I mean, Ruth Gordon is someone who has been around show business forever at that point. You know, she had done some huge films recently, The Big Bus. And she's just kind of a staple. She's someone who, like, I don't know, I guess last week we saw the exact opposite. Ralph Nader was the host of the show last week. And now we get a true stage veteran in Ruth Gordon who comes out and is just super happy to be
She's having
working.
a blast. She's so happy to be there.
I have a thought for you both, and I'm curious what you have to say. I haven't gone back and watched, as you have, in sequential order, a lot of vintage SNL clips lately, but it seemed like she wasn't in a lot of sketches, like abnormally absent. And the whole episode, it feels much more variety showy than I remember a lot of the old SNL episodes, because it's padded out with a lot of non-sketch stuff.
Yeah, it was a little bit of back and forth. I had the same note. I think what we find here, and we find this from time to time, an instance of the writers not knowing what to do for the host, how to incorporate them. But to that point, what you just said, yes, this was a case too. She apparently hated a lot of what was given to her.
That's so sad.
Most notably was a sketch from Franken and Davis where she was supposed to drop dead in the middle of the sketch.
Very Andy Kaufman doing his Radio City special.
Yes.
I mean, O'Donoghue must have loved the idea. By the time it went to air, yeah, it was a very kind of hostile environment where like they weren't happy working with her. She didn't want to be there. Apparently in the Hill and Weingrad book, they write, as soon as this show was done, she literally walked off stage and left the building and was gone. Like she was done. Which to Gary's point, how you were saying she's been around and she's such a pro, you would have thought she was having the time of her life.
Yeah.
Like any time she was on set, she seemed to be just loving life from the very beginning till the closing goodbyes. She just seemed to be having a blast.
And on the flip side, during the closing goodbyes, the cast seemed to love her too. Like I think Gilda gave her a kiss on the cheek. Like it looked very the camaraderie looked amazing.
I think they all really put on the front that even if they weren't having the best time, they didn't let it show on camera.
That's really interesting. Wow.
Yeah. And just because the writers didn't have the best time doesn't mean someone like Gilda's going to have a horrible time though either.
Yeah.
Right? Like Gilda's someone who's just going to appreciate the fun that the person had. And we get Chuck Berry in this episode, which is another one who is like, wait, why was he booked?
Yeah.
It's a fun episode. There's a lot to talk about. Should we just get into it?
Real quick before then, we should remind everybody, we've got our promotion going for the autographed copies of Doug Hill and Jeff Weingrad's book, Saturday Night, A Backstage History of Saturday Night Live. If you haven't already, listen to that episode. It was the Ralph Nader episode. And in order to be eligible to win, just send us an email to notreadyforptpod@gmail.com. And you've got to answer 2 questions, right, Gary?
Yes. 1, what was your favorite story that Jeff and or Doug told during the episode? And then 2, what were our best bits that we all said from the episode? And that's it. It's that easy. Yeah.
There you go.
All right. Should we get into it?
Now I think we can.
All right. So the cold open starts with Lorne on the phone in his office, and he's interrupted by Jane, who brings in John's doctor, who is adamant that Belushi go on air, even though he has a leg injury still. And then we see Gilda bring John in, and he just looks kind of, totally out of it, lying back in a wheelchair. And the doctor's explaining to Lorne that Belushi has to go on because if Belushi doesn't go on, Belushi doesn't get paid. And if Belushi doesn't get paid, then the doctor doesn't get paid. And if the doctor doesn't get paid, then Belushi doesn't get his drugs. And Belushi perks up to camera and says, live from New York, it's Saturday night. So we finally get Belushi doing the live from New York line.
I feel like history doesn't look kindly on this opening, just for, everything that we know was to come for him.
Yeah, I mean, it is a little bit hard watching now. It's especially even though he's in the wheelchair, he still is having a lot of issues with drugs and with addiction and stuff. So it is another instance where the show does tap into the personal lives of the cast and the behind the scenes stuff, which they've been doing. And they've kind of found that rhythm that's what the cold opens really work really well when they do this kind of meta stuff and go behind the scenes. So it's funny in television, but I think not so much in real life. His wife at the time was having still a lot of issues with him. They really weren't happy with how much he was abusing. There was a story, I think in this episode, someone, a production assistant went to grab him out of his locker room to come to set, and he threw a lamp at the door. Like that's how just, volatile he was, even though he was still, as we saw, confined to the wheelchair. So if you can take that, I think, out of it. And again, what we know now and looking back, aside from that, I like it. I think it's a fun opening. They do a good job of the backstageness. They get John back in, which I think a lot of the audience had missed from the episode before. So I like that. It was fun to see him like right off the top. I got to say, like, all right, John's back. It was one of my first notes, like, all right, John's back. Great.
But it was interesting that they went right to those jokes. And
yeah, they went right to it, like right off the top of the show. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a story in the Saturday Night Book. Tom Schiller talks about after this show, they had the after party in Studio 8H. So they're in the studio and it's dark. And as we've seen by the end of the episode, John's confined to the wheelchair the whole time. And apparently Jack Nicholson's there and he's just pushing like a completely, to quote Tom Schiller, John Belushi, quote unquote, Zonko out of his skull around the stage, just like freaking everybody out. And he's like hitting people with his cane and stuff. Like he was just completely, it sounds like he was all like on another planet this night. But, you know, I think the sketch, to talk about the sketch itself, I think it was funny then. It hurts a bit now, but I do think it was a funny sketch at the time.
I haven't talked about the opening credits in a long time, but we do get Bill Murray in the opening credits now.
It's official.
It's official. And then Ruth Gordon comes on for the monologue. And before I had time to really write anything down, it was done. So my first note is, wow, that was fast. It was less than a minute from the time. Yes, from the time her name was said by Don Pardo till we went to the next bit.
Yeah, super quick. But I said, I was like, wow, that was quick. But I loved her energy. And I left this monologue thinking this could be a lot of fun.
Yes.
Because she had such great energy. I was excited.
Agreed.
And she threw out one of my favorite phrases, which I think probably died around this time, where she's like, no. She's like, 5 will get you 10.
Yep.
Like, yeah. I've always loved that phrase. And it feels like it's an old 50s, 60s phrase but I have always loved that 5 will get you 10 phrase. And I love that.
That's funny. I wrote that down and I was thinking of you as I wrote that down because yes,
thanks, man.
It's like Brad's going to appreciate this. But
Gary,
yeah,
she's 80, right? 80 plus this right now.
She's 80. Yeah.
Does she not look better than Desi Arnaz did last year?
Oh, yeah.
Like Desi Arnaz was what, 50 something? If that
I think he was 52 at that point.
She looks good
Desi was
for
hard
80.
living.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to compliment her. Like she looks great for 80.
She does. And she has crazy energy for an 80-year-old too. So yeah, I'll give it to her.
And her earnest speeches are like part of her thing. When she won the Oscar for Rosemary's Baby in '68, she'd been in acting for, I think, 50 years at that point. And she went up and said, I can't tell you how encouraging a thing like this is, which is hilarious for being in the show business for half a century. Thank you to all who voted for me. And for everyone who didn't, please excuse me. This is great. I think that was the end of the speech, too. So I'm just, again, quick in and out, hitting all the right notes, all the enthusiasm, all the golly gee shucks energy, earnestness. And then there you go. What's not to love?
That's awesome. Yeah.
It makes you want to love her more now.
Yeah.
That's
right?
great. Yeah.
Yeah. That's good. Well, after her very short monologue, we get a repeat commercial for the Marines.
Did you love this anymore?
Just saw, 5 episodes ago?
Maybe if that. That was my first note was this again? Really? This killed almost all of my excitement from the monologue was watching this.
Me too. Because I was really excited, all that energy from this person that I didn't think was going to give us all of that energy. And then we get a rerun of the commercial that it was fair the first time we saw it.
Mm-hmm.
But then we come back to just Lorraine
they
on
bounce
stage
back.
singing. Yeah. And Lorraine gives a performance as Barbra Streisand, singing how the camera should be on her because that's what everyone wants to see.
You can't see me, but tell me, could you be me? Goodbye, darling. Hello, me. The best things in life are me. But first be a person who is me. People who are me are the luckiest people in the world. And it's the laughter that we'll remember whenever we remember. M-E-E.
I thought this was great.
Very
I
good.
thought Lorraine was great.
Very,
I thought
very good.
the lyrics were excellent. I thought the way it was shot, even like a performance.
It was shot like a music special with those like low angle. You notice these low angle shots. Yeah, 100%. And the dissolves. Yeah, totally.
I enjoyed it. I felt it went on a little too long, but it might have just been shock from, I'm sure the last full episode of Saturday Night Live that I watched was a modern one where it's just, inherently quicker from social media age editing. But I really, the thing that I do appreciate about these early SNL impressions is it's the Chevy Chase as Gerald Ford. Zero attempt to really make them look like the person. There was a bare minimum hair and some kind of nose prosthesis, but
it was a little long. Like, I agree. I had that note. I agree. The song is amazing. This is written by Marilyn Suzanne Miller along with Cheryl Hardwick. One line I wrote was, I admit the film was weak in places, especially when the camera was on other people's faces.
Yes.
It's just written so smart if you listen to it. And Lorraine, as you said, Gary, does a fantastic job. And I'm maybe about a third of the way in. I'm like, this is very funny.
Yeah.
Where is it going? And because the only thing I think that might have hurt this sketch is there was no intro or outro. So you had no idea what it was. They don't introduce it. They don't do anything. They just come on to her in a darkened space and she just starts singing the song. So it was took a little bit to figure out what was happening and realizing it. Okay, this is literally just her singing a song with no intro, but it's great. It's so good.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, because I felt like everything else in this episode had some sort of setup to it. Or most things in the show with like a title card or something. And this one did not. And it probably, I think, could have helped it.
It would have helped a little bit. Like, again, this is still an amazing piece, and you realize very quickly that it's Barbra Streisand. But even if it was just something, even if it was Don Pardo being like, ladies and gentlemen, Barbra Streisand, I think you would have gotten the joke a little quicker and would have enjoyed it a little better. But it was phenomenal.
And it was almost 4 minutes long. That is long for just a musical number with no context.
She knocked it out of the park, though.
She did. It was awesome.
What did you get? Okay, the deep sigh. You've answered my question. You've answered my question on how you feel about the next sketch. Okay.
So we got a title card for the next sketch, which was the Latilla sisters at home. My immediate reaction was, oh, this is a perfect bit for Ruth Gordon.
Exactly. Yep.
Right? I was like, this is great. Get Ruth Gordon in there with Gilda. It starts with the two of them talking about what they're going to eat. They're going to eat toast. But I just felt like the beginning of this sketch, it didn't feel like Emily Latilla and Ruth Gordon playing older. They kind of felt like children.
I'm sorry. You believe that Ruth Gordon was not a believable old lady? Is that what you're saying? I just want you to clarify.
Yes.
Okay.
I do. Because I feel like they were
Academy
playing it
Award-winning
kids.
Ruth Gordon did not convincingly portray
at 80 years
an
old,
elderly woman.
She did not know how to portray an older lady.
Understood.
Yes. Yeah. I'm just saying, in the beginning, like they were fighting like children.
Yeah.
And it was weird. Like it wasn't two old ladies talking.
Right.
But then, sorry, I should have set it up with Ruth Gordon's character's name is Essie Latilla. And Essie talks to Emily about being on that news program and how great it is.
Emily, yes, I'm so happy that you become the correspondent on News Update.
Oh, yes.
Have you decided what this week's editorial is going to be?
Oh, no, I haven't, Essie. You know, I'm going to need your help. Now, that Jane Curtin girl is going to be so angry with me if I don't come up with something relevant. Now, Essie, what are the burning issues of the day?
The burning tissues of the day? Oh, that's ridiculous. How can you blow your nose on something that's burning?
Issues, Essie, issues.
Oh, well, there's this new fad, transcendental medication. And then there's all this hoopla they're making over ships disappearing into the Magruder Triangle.
This goes on, some weird places, but
I mean, there is a holy shit moment I literally wrote down when.
Yes, there was.
Yeah.
There was a holy shit moment that I was like,
wow,
I'm just going to stop making notes here.
Yeah.
Nothing to write.
Yep. Okay.
And then they start talking about
1977, baby.
Yeah. Essie says, oh, you should talk about flea elections that they're having in China. And she says, no, they're flea erections. And that was the bit.
I actually liked that one because it was a callback. I felt it was a callback to the presidential erections. So I actually, of all of their little bits, that one I liked the best because it was self-referential.
That's interesting.
And I feel like they should have went out on that.
They should have gone out on that. And they should have written that in like 3 minutes earlier and then gone out on it. That's what they should have done.
I like Transcendental Medication. That one was okay.
Yeah, that was a good one. That was a good
yeah.
one. Yeah, I mean, it was an interesting way to see Emily Latilla not at the Weekend Update desk, not messing something up right away. Mm-hmm. Having Ruth Gordon playing her sister was brilliant. Like, it was perfect for Ruth Gordon to come play this role. Jordan, what are your thoughts on Emily Latilla? We've seen a lot of her, so I'm a little biased.
I mean, it is one note, but I do love the wordplay. I did see somebody say, I think it was on a piece on AV Club, where they said that this, as you said, was a great use of Ruth Gordon, but it did set a precedent, although I haven't researched this, of, okay, we have a successful character on this show. Let's now do a sketch where the successful character interacts with their family, who are exactly like the successful character, which is something that's done again and again. And this piece traced it to the sketch. I'm not sure how true that is, but I liked it because it reminds me of my grandma, who's hard of hearing. So it kind of, there is a little bit of that connection for me. But yeah, I do love the wordplay. I do, for some reason. You know, a duck, watch your mouth. Like, that stuff kills me. It's like, it's British drawing room humor. Yes. You know, I mean, it's very Monty Python. It's the Pepper Potts, really. It's like a descendant of the, like, all the John Cleese drag with the screechy voices with Graham Chapman. That's kind of how I saw it, as like a descendant of that.
I can see that. Brad, you're a huge Emily Latilla fan. You have the Emily Latilla tattoo. What did you think about this? He does not actually have an Emily Latilla tattoo.
No.
Jordan was so impressed and so excited for 1 minute.
Only we had a screen grab. I liked it. I did. I liked it. I thought it was a new and fun way to show Emily Latilla, like you kind of mentioned, Gary. I thought it was a great way to incorporate the host. And I liked that they did it so early on in the show. I thought this was a very great early sketch it's Ruth Gordon's first sketch of the night. So it was a great sketch to highlight her early. I like how they made it meta, and they talk about being on Update. Like, it provided, the base for the sketch, It did go on a little long. I don't think they needed that whole bit at the end with the postcard where they read a postcard from a friend. Like, that just seemed pointless. If they would have ended it right after the flea erections with that callback, I think it would have been great, and you could have went right out on a huge applause. But overall, I did enjoy it.
Good. Did you enjoy the next sketch as well?
Probably not as much as you, no.
I know.
This is long.
This was long. So we go back to the Tomorrow Show with Tom Snyder, with Danny playing Tom Snyder again. And this is more of a straight, I don't know, the setup of the Tomorrow Show and everything with the plants and the chair and whatever. And he introduces film producer Dino De Laurentiis, who had just produced King Kong at this point. And there is one funny part in the beginning where Danny's introducing him and says something, and then he turns to the crew and is like, well, so-and-so would like that. Oh, like,
and he's like, I'm Josh. He's like, I'm Josh in the crew.
Yeah. It's like, that was really funny. And then John comes on as Dino De Laurentiis again in the wheelchair. And they talk about the King Kong film that just came out. And Tom Snyder kind of presses him on the cost. And you could have made 20 good films for the amount of money you paid to make this one. Yeah.
It's very Between Two Ferns, which I feel like the whole setup looks like too. But you could have made 20 good films for that cost.
Yeah. But even his setup, he's like, people are saying, and he's like, he's not owning it. He's just like, people are saying you could have done this. And again, I love Danny's impression of Tom Snyder.
I will say I did enjoy Dan's Tom Snyder much more than the last time he did it. I did very much enjoy his Tom Snyder in the sketch.
Yeah. And I enjoyed John's Dino De Laurentiis too.
It wasn't bad. I mean, it's not like that much of a character you would know and realize, but John did a decent job on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the hair work in this sketch.
Oh, yeah.
I like Dan's hair with the gray peppered in. And I love John's hair all moosed up and cried. I don't know why, but I totally loved the hair work in this sketch.
Jordan, what'd you think?
The lines are really good. When Jaws die, nobody cry. When King Kong die, everybody cry. I don't know, it's an inherently ridiculous statement. I love that.
It is. And he keeps going back to it, too.
Yeah.
The owner of a massage parlor.
I make Valachi papers.
Yes, sir.
Nobody cry when Jaws die. Nobody care when Jaws die. When my coffee died, everybody cries. I cry. Fish die. My Kong is a face and nice.
Thank you, sir.
Look, the Kong face. It's a beauty. Intellectuals, they cry. You know what I'm going to do? I spent $10 million on that Kong. You know that, Tom? $10 million?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, when he does it later in the sketch, that was one that used to be on the highlight reels for the first 15, 20 years. Like, when Jaws died, nobody cried. Nobody cried when Jaws died. Totally.
I'm just curious how this sketch plays to somebody who, a person coming of age in the, early 2000s who has no idea who Tom Snyder is, or Dino De Laurentiis, other than being Giada's grandfather. I love Tom Snyder just because he did some great interviews with John Lennon on the Tomorrow Show. But I'm curious how that plays to somebody who has no idea what the context is.
Oh, I can tell you from reviews of our podcast, it doesn't.
Yeah.
These are the types of impressions that you have to have some context.
Yeah.
If you have no clue what this is, you just think they're two weird characters that they're doing. And maybe it's still funny.
But you don't know why. You're not really getting why.
Yeah, not as funny.
Yeah.
I mean, Dino almost seems like a Peter Sellers character or something with Belushi doing it. He seems
Way
like,
he's with wearing the sunglasses like Dr. Strangelove in the wheelchair.
Yeah,
I can see that. And the hair. Yeah. That's a good call. But I thought, again, like these two alone on camera are great when they're talking to each other.
Yeah.
Even in character, they're so much fun.
I believe they're credited as writing this, the two of them, which you can see because it is so long. But there's some good. My favorite Dan moment was there's a moment where he was talking to John about something and John's like, well, some people don't like you. And Dan laughed like that Tom Snyder laugh. And I thought it was amazing.
It's so funny. He's just like, oh, yeah,
that's really good.
So thank you. I love Dan's Tom Snyder. I think it's like one of my favorite impressions that we've seen thus far in the show's run because he just commits to it. And he takes it up a notch with his arms up and all over the place.
I love how, obviously the main thing about Dan is how manic he is, but my favorite display of that manic energy is when he's playing someone who must be still, like a talk show host, and it seeps out in these weird ways, like weird body language or these weird nervous bits of laughter. And you're totally right. That's how I think it somehow offsets the mania when he has to be sort of still.
Yeah, I'm a big energy guy. And Dan always brings energy to the show. So I thought it was fun. I loved this sketch.
And I know we'll get to it later on where he does that even better in this episode later on.
Yes.
But this was another one. It was a little long. It was shortly after they did the Nobody Cried When Jaws Died. The second time, I was like, Jesus, this is still going?
Mm-hmm.
And then I started to wonder, like, maybe they can't find enough for Ruth Gordon to do this episode. And that's why this John and Danny sketch is so long.
Yeah.
Because this, as Jordan brought up earlier, this is the start of the Ruth Gordon MIA for a good chunk of show. Between this and Chuck Berry and Weekend Update, most of Weekend Update, it's like she does duck out for a bit.
Well, in the immediate, she comes back to introduce her friend, Chuck Berry. So maybe that's why Chuck Berry's on the show.
I loved that she introduced him as my friend, Chuck Berry. That was my first one. Loved it.
I missed that. You're right.
Yeah. I was just like, well, that's an interesting friendship to have. I would love to.
Like, let's picture that backstage.
Right?
Chuck Berry showing up, pissed off at the world. Ruth Gordon's there, happy as hell.
But maybe not. You just said she was pissed off at the show. So maybe the two of them pissed off. They were just, maybe they became friends backstage. Chuck Berry comes on to sing Johnny Be Good. Released in 1958. We're all familiar with Johnny Be Good. Brad and I like to play this game, Jordan. We're going to play it with you right now, too. But if you know the answer, please let Brad answer first. How old is Chuck Berry in this performance?
That's a great question.
I think I know.
Okay, let Brad answer first.
I didn't even oh, Christ.
Just give us a number. How old do you think he is?
45.
I think he was born in 26, I think. So I'm going to say 50 or 51.
You're right. He was 50.
Of course he was. It's TMI guy. Of course he knows.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I prefaced it with please don't answer first. But yeah, I honestly thought he was a lot older when I first saw him.
Yeah.
And when I realized he was only 50, I was like, oh, I'm actually. And Brad, you said 45.
I usually guess too high. Is this performance any good?
I mean, it is the song that made me fall in love with rock and roll. So I have to, that gets a lot of mileage with me. It does seem kind of phoned in. Not as phoned in as the one he did on the Mike Douglas show with John Lennon, where he purposely just tries to wrong foot John Lennon, and that was the purpose of the performance by changing the key as they were doing the count in and then throwing to John to solo. So it's not as pissed off and as spiteful as that one, but yeah, not my favorite performance of his.
I think phoned in is
okay.
Maybe a little harsh, but now you're probably right. I mean, he throws in the duck walk.
You do get a duck
those
walk.
splits, yeah.
Yeah, he throws in some splits. Yeah.
Did his guitar sound off? Like when he wasn't soloing, it felt very noticeable. I feel like I didn't hear his guitar in the mix. And then when he started to solo, all of a sudden it was like very loud and you could hear him soloing. But when he wasn't, it felt like he wasn't turned on.
That's interesting. I don't. Now I got to re-listen. It might have just been just a bad mix from like the sound guy. Like I always take it back to the Beatles. Like the sound guy when the Beatles were on Sullivan the first time didn't realize that John was going to be a lead vocalist on some of the songs. So if you listen to those Sullivan episodes, his vocal mic is turned way down. You can barely hear him. I wonder if it was just some screw up with the sound guy at 8H. I'm not sure. That's interesting.
It did sound like they were like riding the levels, like to Brad's point, like when he was soloing, it was all there. And then
because
when
they
he
were
started
so
singing,
close on him. So like you're seeing him strum the guitar.
Yeah,
I
you
feel like I'm
couldn't see.
not hearing that much. But then all of a sudden he goes to solo and it's like everything else goes down. It's like, there's the guitar.
maybe he was just like, I'm only going to play on solos.
Maybe.
That's a very good point.
Right? If he's phoning it in, he's like, F it.
Yeah.
I got this.
You want the full song? That's another $5,000. All right.
Yeah. I'm here as a favor to my dear friend, Ruth Gordon.
Yeah.
The rest of you, fuck off.
It's like, I'm getting scale. I'm doing solos. You know what? Sorry.
Yeah.
Listen, I don't know if there's a more spiteful man in the business than Chuck Berry, so I don't doubt that story.
Weekend Update starts with Jane putting on perfume and all different parts of her body and then smelling it.
Mm-hmm.
And then she realizes the camera's on her, and then she starts in on Gerald Ford jokes.
What do you think about this opening gag?
The perfume bit?
Mhm.
Meh.
I think she plays so much better straight.
Yeah.
I think it just sets up the whole Weekend Update better when it's just, ladies and gentlemen, Jane Curtin. And she said, here now is the new. I think it just sets up the whole vibe of Update better when she doesn't do these kind of things.
I agree.
Because she's so good. Jordan, as someone who hasn't watched a handful of Jane Curtin yet, did you like the opening gag?
I agree with you. I think it's way funnier when you play it completely serious and have that gravitas, which then just offsets the absurdity of whatever it is that they're saying. No, I agree. I think that kind of undercuts the gag. And I didn't think it was that funny of a gag, and it kind of went on a little too long.
Yeah, I agree. We get some Ford jokes. We get some Carter inauguration jokes. And then we go to Lorraine on location with Ruth Gordon, who's playing Jimmy Carter's mother, and talks about how proud she is that he kept Jimmy instead of going by James when he was sworn in, and that he told his mother he would never tell a lie. And then Lorraine asks when she knew he was going to become president. And the punchline of the whole setup is when he sold that line of crap to his own mother. That's when she realized he was going to become president, that he would never lie again.
It's a long setup for a medium funny punchline. Long circular setup. All right, old lady saying crap. Got it. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, I think the real question here, Gary, is Ruth Gordon playing Jimmy Carter's mother.
Yeah.
Believable to you? She plays an older woman here. Did you buy it?
Yeah, because she wasn't arguing like a child.
Or was it because she wore a wig? A white wig?
No, it was the scarf she had around her neck.
Because I actually have a note here. Hey, can play an old lady fairly well. I literally wrote that note.
See, You
I was
agreed with
impressed.
me at one point. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that was whatever. That was this week's Lorraine.
Jordan had a very good, very long circular way for a medium joke. Yeah. That's a good description.
It is. Well, we get some more mediocre jokes in this weekend update around the Carter family, Indira Gandhi.
I think the Indira Gandhi joke was funny. I think it was a bummer. They had an issue with the camera. She didn't know which camera to look at. And I think it took the pace off and threw
Killed
her
the
off
rhythm.
because it was a funny joke. And I think that's what screwed that joke up.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Oh, my favorite joke of the whole weekend update was, I mean, I'm a sucker for Billy Carter jokes, like possibly the most deadbeat presidential family member
Speaking
in
of
modern
things people
history.
haven't said since 1977. All right.
But I mean, come on. I mean, the founder and president-in-chief of Billy Beer, come on. And when asked for comment, Billy responded, burp. That was great. That was a great line.
Yeah,
And-
and Jane actually burped.
And she did
which
pretty
I was
well.
impressed by. Yes.
How great is Jane?
How great is Jane?
Nothing she can't do.
Except the perfume thing. But
Yeah. Sell the perfume gag. Yeah.
she then throws to commercial.
God damn it.
And
I was pissed when they did the Still to Come, but this one is pretty amazing.
yeah, so this is a live commercial. It's not a pre-tape. And it's Dan as Crazy Ernie.
No.
It's a
No. It's Dan
No,
as Crazy
he's-
Frank.
He starts as Crazy Ernie, and then he says, I'm actually not Crazy Ernie. I'm Crazy Frank.
Gotcha.
So check yourself before you
Check.
correct me.
Roger that.
Crazy Ernie, boy, is Ernie crazy. He's been at it again, folks. Slashing prices solo, you won't believe it. Shop around and come see for yourself. Crazy Ernie will not be undersold. For the best bargains in stereo equipment, TVs, radios, Crazy Ernie is your man. He's got it all. Burning Langdorf, Hi-Fi components, coax, BL840s with custom headphones, Betamax Chrome Classic cassette decks, Jaws, Triplex 4 standing speakers, and lots more. Crazy Ernie, his prices are insane. I mean it. His prices are insane because Crazy Ernie is really crazy. And I don't mean crazy prices crazy. I'm talking crazy not playing with a full deck crazy. I mean really crazy. Look at this. This iHi-Adi skating turntable with face lock circuitry and direct motor drive. $900 marked down to $12. This brand new Nipomatic color squeeze television set now yours for 52 cents. And why is Crazy Ernie slashing prices so low? Because it's not Crazy Ernie's store. In fact, he's not even Crazy Ernie. He's Crazy Frank, Crazy Ernie's cousin. You see, last Tuesday, the real Crazy Ernie, whose store this really is, ran off to the Bahamas with Crazy Frank's girl. To tell you the truth, I don't like being left alone with him. You know, if I had a shovel or something to stun him with, you'd be crazy not to take advantage of these bargains. Cash in on this. Crazy Frank wants to unload all this stuff by next Tuesday. When the real Crazy Ernie gets back from the Bahamas, Crazy Frank, his prices are insane.
This is so much fun. If you know the Crazy Eddie's commercials from the 70s and then 80s, like this.
Crazy Ernie.
Again, no, the real commercials are Crazy Eddie.
Is it Crazy Eddie?
Yeah.
Oh my God, you're right.
God damn, you
I wrote it
did
there
nothing.
Too. No, I did write it there. Okay. Jesus. This is why we edit.
Again, with Dan with his energy. Oh, we are not editing any of this. Dan's crazy frenetic energy is so good on camera, and it's Dan talking about stereos and these things that he loves. It's even more fun.
I just even these little throwaway lines he has, like if I had a shovel to stun him with, like that he just did on the fly, like you could tell.
Yeah, he was great.
Was Crazy Eddie, it was like New York tri-state, right? This wasn't a national phenomenon. He was very localized, right?
He was like a New York thing, but I think Crazy Eddie's thing was known.
He was based in the tri-state area, right? And we grew up here, so I knew him from that, but I wasn't sure how well, which I don't mind. Like, again, we've said this, I love when they do very like New York centric specific things that maybe people in California and Texas and, Arizona won't understand, but we get the joke, I think is really fun.
I think it was a local New York commercial that then a lot of SNL vets would parody, and then that disseminated out to the country, because I think in the Brave Little Toaster, when John Lovitz is doing his radio character, I think he does a Crazy Eddie, or somebody in that movie does a Crazy Eddie. I forget who. And I know he's obviously was on SNL too. I think that just became like a bit character that people did that probably had its genesis from comedians in the New York area, I would imagine. But yeah, the Crazy Eddie was That's like a Hulu miniseries level fraud scandal. His Wikipedia page is crazy. Did prison time and
there is a documentary on him somewhere.
Really?
Probably Netflix. I only
Oh.
saw it in passing. I haven't seen it, but I did see that it exists the other day. I saw that it actually, it's out there. I feel
That's awesome.
I did write this note. When is TMI doing their episode on Crazy Eddie?
we really should. I
feel
was
this is-
like, you're right. It's a nutty story. Like
Yeah.
that's its own series. I feel like,
Yeah.
he fled the country and had to be extradited. There was an SEC investigation. Yeah, it's pretty nuts.
God.
But I thought this commercial was great for a commercial in the middle of Weekend Update.
The only knock I would have, I got a little lost at the end when he started telling the story about Crazy Eddie and Crazy Frank and how he left with his wife and is coming back, and just I didn't feel it was the best character to try to tell the audience a story. It was much better at like just the rambling and the yelling and the facts. It's probably maybe just
But
been
I,
me.
like that set everything up for like why he was selling the
Yeah.
stereos for $4 because he was like, these aren't even mine because I'm not Crazy Ernie, I'm Crazy Frank. Crazy Ernie ran away with my girlfriend and they're not going to be back until Sunday, so you have until then to get down here and get all of this crap.
It's true.
Like that was the setup. I liked that because it gave it
Okay.
Yeah.
it grounded it a little bit.
I say for me, it just took me out a little bit because I was enjoying like I was just enjoying the character so much, and it took me out of it a little bit. But it's still great. It's a still phenomenal
It
game.
is. And then we come back to the desk and there's a correction. And I was like, oh, she's going to bring back Emily Latilla. But no, she just talks about the correction and then finishes that bit and then brings on Emily Latilla. And I was like, God damn it. We've already seen her.
I was wondering if they were going to exactly. We've already seen her. Do they bring her back or not?
And they brought her back and it was like a soft intro from Jane and there was no reaction from the audience. And I think it's because they were all thinking the same thing I was, which is we already saw her tonight. Do we need her more?
Well, and there's nothing here.
There literally is nothing here.
Is this any better than the silly misunderstanding gag? No.
No, it was just, Emily Latilla didn't have anything to discuss because nothing really got her goat.
Right.
And then Jane dresses her down because as a correspondent, she has to bring something to the show.
And
then we get the bitch line.
And that's what I think this really was, is this has replaced Generalissimo Francisco Franco as the new Weekend Update catchphrase. Because that's all this was. They knew everybody wanted to see her call her a bitch. And so they brought her back out just for that. Yeah. What was more difficult to watch, Emily Latilla or Garrett's intro of the Gary Weiss film?
Oh, man.
Mm-hmm.
It's like no one told him he had to do that until it was time to go out and do that.
He looked high as a kite. And then the first shot in Gary Weiss's film is him lighting a joint.
This is the first time we've seen Garrett all night.
Yes, it is.
It's come on, man, you've had all night. And then it dawned on me, have we seen Bill yet?
Nope, we haven't. But this Bob Seger film that Garrett introduces is about a woman he used to know. And then it's just, essentially it's like a music video of the song Night Moves by Bob Seger of a woman in her nightgown tossing and turning in a bed. And then occasionally going to shots of Garrett on TV. And then eventually she takes off the nightgown she was in and tears a picture. I don't know what happened there. Did anyone? No, everyone's shaking their head. No, none of us knew what happened. I feel better.
Was that the whole fucking song?
It felt like
it. Yeah. There was no suggestion of humor in that whole clip.
Jordan.
No.
Please, Gary Weiss, please. You don't know. No suggestion.
Well, we can't blame Gary Weiss for the next bit.
We could try.
We could try. So this was another long sketch that is set up by Dan as Captain Joe Palantine or Palantine, I forget what he says, from the geriatric division in any town. I could be in any city. And he goes on to give a very long exposition of how geriatrics come into different towns and then have to turn to prostitution. And they call them little old ladies of the night. And then we go to a scene in a coffee shop where Garrett's a pimp and Gilda and Lorraine are two of his prostitutes, and he's talking. This is like a pretty elaborate set with extras in the background and like a lot going on. And of course, Ruth Gordon comes in because this is about little old ladies of the night. So she just got off of a bus and she starts talking to Garrett and pulls her into his prostitution ring. And then Dan, and the first time we see Billy is here. I actually wrote down, we have all of these extras and Bill's not even an extra in this sketch. But then we see him as Dan's partner with like I don't know. It was very strange. And then the more that Dan talks, and he talks about hustling and pimps for their Johns, they take money from Johns for their pimps. Whenever he would say those words, he would get angrier and say them louder and louder and louder throughout the sketch. And that was like the bit, really, to me.
I'm fairly certain this was a sketch for Dan to get more and more irate with the lines, turning tricks with Johns for pimps. Like
Yes.
by the end, I realized, that's what this sketch was about. It had nothing to do with Ruth Gordon. It was all a sketch for Dan.
Yes.
And the others that are like you and like me. You know?
Run her uptown, Bill. I'll talk to you later.
Let's go, baby. Sorry.
Honky pegged. Remember Attica? Attica!
Well, there it is, a sweet little lady. If we hadn't stopped her, she could have become a street hustler. And you know what street hustlers do? They turn tricks with John for their pants.
Hey, honey, want to go to a party?
Yeah, I guess so.
See, I loved that for that reason.
I don't mean it as a bad thing. Like,
No.
they totally like hoodwinked you on it.
I mean, I'm a gargantuan Monty Python nerd, and this just felt like the sequel to Hell's Grannies from Monty Python. It felt like the
Yes.
Midnight Cowboy inspired sequel to Hell's Grannies.
And it was also kind of like Dragnet in a way. Like
My first note was Dan doing his Joe Friday again. Yeah, it was very, very much that same thing. Yeah. We need to give a shout out to friend of the pod, Neil Levy, getting some lines.
Yes, he did. Well, that was actually my note, was there are all these extras and Neil Levy gets a line and I haven't seen Bill Murray tonight.
So actually, yes, Neil Levy speaks on camera this episode before Bill Murray does. Yeah.
Yes.
I have a fact about Ruth Gordon and prostitution that I'd like to share. She won an Emmy.
Whoa,
Yeah, here we go.
If only we could, like, if you had set that up as what do Ruth Gordon and prostitution have in common?
Well, I will tell you. And Gold Hardware, she won an Emmy for her guest appearance on Taxi. The episode was titled Sugar Mama, and her character tries to pick up Judd Hirsch as a male escort.
Oh, I love this.
It's a good episode.
I mean, if there were any Ruth Gordon fans still alive, they'd be loving this episode right now.
This one's for the kids.
This one's for the great grandkids. Did you know that before the Eras tour by Taylor Swift, Chuck Berry had the largest grossing tour of 1959?
Okay. Yeah. About that.
And he comes on to sing two of those songs that he would have played on tour in 1959. Well, one of them. Yeah. He comes on and sings Memphis, Tennessee, which was originally released in 1959 and then re-released in 1963. And then he rolls into Carol from 1958. And in that performance, he got the band involved. Everybody got a little solo.
I liked Carol. Carol was my favorite performance of the night. I think he wasn't into the other ones, and I really liked Carol.
I agree. Carol was a solid performance, all things considered.
Yeah.
Because he knew it was his last.
Maybe.
He's like, I got the cash. I'm ready to go. There's a reason Chuck Berry was not at the Good Nights tonight. He finished that tune and was out the door.
The cab was outside. Yeah, the meter was running.
He's like, Ruth, I'll be at the bar. I'll see you at 1:05. I got your gimlet ready. Get out here.
Oh, man. I love a good gimlet.
You've heard the Chuck Berry stories where, like, when he was touring, I guess around this time, or the early 70s. I only know this because Bruce Springsteen opened for him, where he would tour by himself and they would hire local bands to open for him, and there'd be no rehearsal. And they're like, what song should we know? And Chuck Berry's answer was like, Chuck Berry songs, motherfucker. And then he would just start playing, and you wouldn't know what song it was until he would play like, 10 or 20 seconds in it. I actually saw him in concert like in the 2000s or something. And it's funny because I'd heard the story and I noticed it as every song was Chuck Berry starting until the band realized what song it was. And then the whole band would come in, but he would come in and like walk in the door, like 10 minutes before showtime, guitar in hand, and be like, where's my check? And like, okay. And then just walk right on stage and be like, let's go.
Wow.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So back to sketches, and we get Ruth Gordon back, and she plays a babysitter babysitting a young Gilda, and they're watching TV. They turn it off because it's not age appropriate. And then Gilda starts asking her all these questions about where babies come from. Why do women have more private parts than men? I thought that was a funny punchline, actually. She was like, because men are always losing everything.
That was good.
And then she starts explaining sex and babies and like kind of childlike terms. And then they just turn back on the show that they turned off, Babies and Makeup. Yeah, that was this sketch, was just Gilda playing a young child and Ruth Gordon playing a babysitter.
Which is always pretty decent. The Gilda part. Gildan as a little girl is usually pretty good. And it was here. Like her reactions and all were really good.
Jordan, what was your take on this one?
I really didn't like this one. I mean, I love Gilda. I mean, she plays an incredible little girl, but for something about this one, I found, and the joke about guys are always losing things. That was a great punchline, but overall, I thought this one was really uncomfortable.
We bounce back, though. I say we bounce back next.
So Mr. Bill's back. This is Sluggo the magician. We see Sluggo. He eats Spot. That one is always funny to me.
I like the shot where they cut to him and he's got a little bit of the tail hanging out of his mouth.
Yeah,
I did
the
like
tail.
That. That was fun.
I also like when they give Mr. Bill the toupee because they brush his hair.
Part. Yeah,
the mod look toupee.
Yeah, this was fun. It's a fun Mr. Bill.
Yeah, standard Mr. Bill was funny. I like he's going to go in the box to get cut in half by the magician, and they clamp his arm down in the box. Was fun, and then he saws him in half, and he just dumps the box open, and the parts all fall out. Like it's. I mean, it's by the numbers, Mr. Bill. It's what you wanted. It's funny. Got a great reaction. It was good.
Yeah.
And they introduced him this time, which was nice. They actually, I think for the first time on a home movie, introduced who did it.
Instead of a sketch, we get a magician next. Ricky Jay comes on to do some card tricks for us. He starts with card tricks.
Before that,
card tricks, just laughing.
Before that, again, Ruth Gordon is having a blast, isn't she?
Yes.
Her intro to him is she's having so much fun. I love her.
Yeah. So Ricky Jay comes on, does some card tricks, and then he brings some folks on stage to do some mind reading. Yeah, this was fun. Again, it was different, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, we've talked about this, Jordan. I think you mentioned it earlier. It's more of a variety show at this point in time, and so they're bringing on these people, these performers that are not comedians necessarily, not musicians, but they're doing something outside the box, and this is an instance of that. And this was fun.
I love Ricky Jay. He's such a fascinating guy. There's an incredible American Masters documentary called Deceptive Practice, The Mysteries and Mentors of Ricky Jay from, I think it was from 2015. And he goes so deep on the history of magic, and not to mention the insane number of hours he spends practicing in front of these like mirrors that you can kind of see every angle of his hands, so he can practice and just totally perfectly study what the audience can see when he shuffles and does sleight of hand. He's such an amazing artist.
Yeah, I love Ricky Jay too. I mean, people probably don't know him as a musician. You might know him more as an actor, but I mean, and we're not going to do justice. I mean, if you like sleight of hand and kind of these kind of bits, you'll really love this piece. It's going to be, I think it's hard for us to describe it, but I think he does a great job. I loved watching this. It was tons of fun. It was something different, which was great. And yeah, it was a lot of fun.
I liked the big out for Ricky Jay too. They had like the banner fall down with the 7 and the Chiron comes up with big flashing 7s. It was a lot of fun. It's a great way to end the whole thing too. There was not much flashy, though, in the next bit, which was Howard Hughes. Lorraine playing Howard Hughes.
How many times are you going to say that someone does an impression of Barbra Streisand and Howard Hughes in the same episode?
Yes. I was going to say that.
Good on
I
you,
was gonna
Lorraine.
say,
Good on you.
very long narrative exposition at the beginning to set it up. This one is all about his final days being a total recluse in a hotel. And we see Danny and Billy putting tissues all over Garrett because he's going to go in to fix the projector for $2,000 for 5 minutes of work. And then we see the whole scene play out where they go into the room with Howard Hughes, again, Lorraine playing Howard Hughes, and they have to take him for a walk, which is just Billy picking her up and walking around the room and then saying, "Oh, I felt a raindrop. Let's go back in." And then he wants to fly the plane, so they pretend they're plane propellers. Like, it was just absurd. And there were bottles of urine all over the place. It was kind of...
How often on network TV do you see jars of urine? I just went, that has to be some kind of broadcasting first. Like, All in the Family had the first toilet flush. I would argue that SNL had the first jars of urine. You can quote me on that.
Yeah. A lot going on here for a sketch at 1:45 in the morning.
And yet, I got nothing to say.
No?
It's pretty brutal.
It is pretty rough for Howard Hughes. I enjoyed Lorraine playing this character, like you said, juxtaposed to playing Barbra Streisand earlier in the night. It was strange, though. I mean, the whole thing is strange.
Yeah.
I just found it really weird because I have random obsessions, and Howard Hughes is one of them. And I just thought it was weird that they were getting into, like, he stayed in his hotel room eating banana nut ice cream and watching the movie Ice Station Zebra. Just like all these really specific references that, like, I just was shocked that was disseminated into popular culture. All the, like, weird little quirks of what he would do to spend his days up in a penthouse at the Desert Inn in Las Vegas or wherever he was. So I just thought that was weird. It was just weirdly specific in a way that it didn't need to be to make the joke land, but I appreciated it.
It kind of feels like a Dan piece. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you know who wrote it? But
I could see that. Yeah.
And I've never had banana nut ice cream, but I'm curious what that is.
They discontinued it. Baskin Robbins did. And then he ended up basically making a personal appeal, I'm sure with some financial element involved, to make sure Baskin Robbins continued to make it because he loved it so much. He single-handedly bankrolled that flavor for years.
Holy shit. Is it still one of their 31 flavors?
I don't know.
All right. I'm going to just go to BaskinRobbins.com right now.
TMI. Ding.
Well, it doesn't look like they have banana nut
so
ice cream
sorry.
any longer. I mean, he's been dead for 45 years. So
yeah, that money ran out.
You should check out, Jordan, the Raquel Welch from season 1. They do a sketch where Dan Aykroyd plays Howard Hughes designing the bra for her, and it's you probably really like it.
we go from a really dark, weird sketch with bottles of urine to a really weird sketch with really weird film clips. So it's the world of adventure. And I think this is the first time, right? We've seen E. Buzz Miller as the host, and he introduces Ruth Gordon's character as she's some doctor from Berkeley, and she had just come back from some country in Africa. I don't remember what, but he's all excited to roll the footage of nude women in Africa. That is what this is, right?
That's pretty much the joke. It's, he tells her she had ruins, and he says something like, "We had the stuff with the ruins. We cut that out. This is what the people wanted to see."
It was all right, but see, we got to get out.
Yeah, well, you had his stuff about the ruins and stuff. We cut that out because we felt the folks at home would really appreciate that
I got to tell you because I didn't bother.
Yeah, well, one dance says it, I think. In fact, it was the best film you took.
Of every aspect of Bushman culture, see.
Yeah, sure. Well, come back and visit us again, Listen, we're going to have some films from Tahiti next week, And we got another anthropologist just returned from Kenya where he studied the Puntari tribe, and we're going to see some fascinating culture there on World of Adventure next time. So you're all going to tune in. Terrific. Thanks for coming in.
Well,
it felt like E. Buzz Miller light to me. Like, this character gets so much better. And so I think we'll talk about him more when he actually becomes the E. Buzz Miller we all know. But this definitely felt like maybe a trial run. Like, let's see how people feel like, because it definitely felt a little E. Buzz light.
It was, but it was so quick.
Yeah.
It was one of those where I was like, did they have to cut this sketch in half for time because it was so little Buzz Miller? I don't know.
Or they were only allowed to show so many of those clips on network TV, even though it was after the watershed.
That's true. I was just surprised because we haven't seen Ruth Gordon since the babysitter sketch. And then we see her again for this, and it's so short. It was just, I was expecting it to be longer. But then we wouldn't have had time for Mr. Mike's Least Loved Bedtime Tales. Again, Mr. Mike's on. This time Gilda plays his French maid, who Mr. Mike finds dust on his flamingo.
It's the best line of the entire show. Fifi, there's dust in my flamingo. That's gold.
She asks for a bedtime tale, and she sits on his lap. He tells her the story of Willie the Worm, who got run over by a truck, and like all of Mr. Mike's tales.
Jordan's loving this. I'm gonna let him go.
I do. I love. I mean, just for me, it had me from Fifi. There's dust in my flamingo, and it never let me go. Although this was not one of his. I mean, the one with Jodie Foster, even though there was something really bile-inducing about watching him cradle Jodie Foster in his arms, but just that one was a more gruesome. I almost feel like this one wasn't gruesome enough, but I love it.
I didn't love this one. I think it's starting to get too big. Like now he has props. He's a flamingo. Like he started off just him to camera. I like the Jodie Foster one because we had talked about it. It did play better when he was telling the story to a person a little bit than to camera. So we did like that. But this was a little bit for me just too much, too big, too much pomp and circumstance. I actually liked the story of it all. It was all the extra stuff I didn't like, the Fifi and all that shit. Did you like seeing OJ in the crowd? Because that happened.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that.
Holy shit, that was OJ.
And was it the caption on the guy next to him, brought here under guard or something?
Something like that, yeah. Which I don't know who that guy was.
Yeah, I don't know who that was.
So we see OJ, and then after OJ, we come back for good night.
Yeah, I don't know how you top that.
What, OJ?
Yeah.
You come back with Ruth Gordon saying, "We all stayed alive."
The woman was ahead of her time.
She was. She also joked about, you all should have seen the bare-ass changes I was doing all night.
That's what I'm saying. She was having a blast. That was a great joke. She was fun. Until the bitter end, she was having a blast.
I thought that was a nice good night.
Yeah.
She clearly seemed like she was having fun, whether or not she was, whatever. But she sold it like she was. And then the cast comes up and they help John on stage. And that was it. That was our show.
Jordan, you weren't much of a fan, right? You didn't like it?
No, it was just, it felt very unsettled. It felt or padded out with a lot of these extraneous elements. The Mr. Bill, the Ricky Jay. I think, that was my mistake, is that I started researching it before I actually watched it. And I saw a lot of critical analysis being like, this one's famously, one of the lesser episodes of season 2. And I shouldn't have done that.
You cannot like a show. It's fine. Ask Dick Cavett. They're not all winners.
I liked it. To me, it all came alive when Danny was on. That was really what made it all worthwhile for me.
I think you can say that a lot of times. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I think especially in season 2, there have been multiple episodes where you're like, wow, Danny was on a lot and he was the all-star of the show. Like he carried some shows by himself.
And I mean, I don't totally disagree with you. I don't think it was great. I think it was really up and down. I liked the cold open. I thought the monologue was really great, and I thought it set the show up really well. I enjoyed the Emily the Teller sketch. Ricky Jay was really cool. Mr. Bill was funny. The Lorraine's Barbra Streisand, which feels like an eternity ago, but that was really good. But then you get the Howard Hughes thing, the E. Buzz Miller tryout, the not so great Mr. Mike. So it's like, it was kind of very up and down for me. But overall, I'd say more good than bad overall.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah,
I agree. And I think, for me, I'm always was the host into being on the show and up for anything. And Ruth Gordon seemed like she was up for anything. She seemed to be having fun during her monologue and the good nights, and even introducing Ricky Jay and Chuck Berry. She was like game for these things.
I agree. Now that you've said that, it feels like she had fun doing that, but not so much in the sketches. Like she really had much more fun being Ruth Gordon and introducing stuff than being in any of the sketches. Like just looking back and thinking about it now.
Yeah. I mean, I think I don't know. She seemed to have fun with the Little Old Ladies of the Night sketch. I mean, I don't think it was a great sketch. And I think that's probably why she didn't seem like she was having fun with all of these sketches, was more on the writing than I think on her. Jordan, what were your best bits?
Oh man, let's see. I bolded the ones that were my favorite. I mean, it was pretty much everything with Danny. I liked Crazy Ernie for the reason you mentioned, Gary. It could have just been 90 seconds of Danny just screaming at the camera, which would have been hilarious anyway. But to have the little subplot in it about it being his brother or his nemesis' store and him selling all the stuff out from under him, I thought that was a really funny and clever and unexpected move, because I just thought he was doing Bassomatic again. I liked the Little Old Ladies of the Night purely because I did not. Ruth Gordon screaming Attica was hilarious. I like that a lot.
We didn't touch on that. I wrote that down. Yeah, that was funny.
The increasing fury and also the insane cadence that Danny would growl tricks with their Johns and their pimps. I can't even do it. The strange rhythm that he would do it. To me, I mean, that's him at his best. Again, it's the Monty Python thing. It's just the completely unhinged. And then the Howard Hughes thing, just the perversity of it. I mean, he was already dead, and it's a brutal sketch. I mean, it's mean, and I just was sort of shocked by it. So yeah, those are my three.
All right. Brad, how about you? What are your best bits?
I had Dan's Crazy Frank as well. It was pretty amazing. And I had two. My second was Lorraine's Barbra Streisand, the Me song. I thought that was awesome.
Those were my two as well. The Crazy Ernie, Crazy Frank commercial, and the Barbra Streisand bit. I really liked the Tomorrow Show. I just felt like it went on a little too long, and we're in alignment, which is odd, Brad, to have the same two. But that's good. Jordan, this was great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a blast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Where can our listeners hear you?
Let's see. I am. The show is Too Much Information. That's on wherever you get your favorite podcasts, as we are forced to say on my network. And also just wrapped up a show called Stones Touring Party about the Rolling Stones tour in 1972 when the Hells Angels were trying to kill Mick Jagger. So that's kind of a little rock and roll true crime element going. And that is also wherever you get your favorite podcasts. And I'm on Twitter. Actually, that's really the only place. You don't want to see me. Just Twitter. Twitter's fine. You don't need my Instagram. Not much to look at.
Well, hopefully you'll post on Instagram Ruth Gordon's birthplace for everyone so they can see that
I will.
there. Next week, we're going to be talking about Season 2, Episode 13 with host Fran Tarkenton and musical guests Leo Sayer and Donnie Harper and the Voices of Tomorrow.
Shit, so we got to research because I have zero idea. God damn it. Okay.
Until then, good night and have a pleasant tomorrow.
Good night and have a pleasant tomorrow.
You guys are the best.
The Not Ready for Primetime podcast is a 2 Pints Productions production. Produced and edited by Brad and Gary. Thought about by Brad and Gary. Please rate and review. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.